playing all the RPGs, the final frontier. These are the chuntrings of Orlanth Rex's gaming vexes. Its continuing mission, to run or play all the games on my shelf, to pontificate about what we did and didn't like, to boldly go where probably loads of gamers have been before. Hi, this is Steve, and here are some more of my gaming vexes. Well, as you may have guessed, on this episode we discuss our experiences of playing the Star Trek Adventures RPG published by Modiphius. Like a lot of gamers, Star Trek has been with me since I can remember, from sitting on the sofa watching it with my mum after tea, through holding back manly tears at Spock's death scene in The Wrath of Khan, all the way up to just loving the Lower Decks animated series. Trek has always been a fixture. Whilst I enjoyed the high adventure of Star Wars, I always appreciated the fundamentally positive Trek message and the great moments it created on screen. So, as one of the earliest sci-fi franchises, it isn't a surprise that it's had several RPGs associated with it over the years. Although an early version was published in 1978 by Heritage Models, the Star Trek RPG really came into its own with FASA's series of publications from 1982 through to 1990. I remember seeing loads of supplements and scenarios on the shelves when I got into RPGs in 1984, and although I had the second edition box and a couple of supplements, I never got around to playing or running it before I swapped it for something else. Before the current Modiphius run started in 2017, other versions were also published by Task Force Games, then Last Unicorn Games, and finally Decipher Inc. I think I purchased most of the products across these various publications, but again, they were all sold or swapped before seeing play. So it was only with the first edition of Modiphius' game that I finally managed to get Trek to the table, and that's what we look back on during this episode. Unusually for this podcast, I've also put together a postscript after the main section, giving some of my thoughts regarding the second edition of the game, which was released in August 2024. Admittedly, I've only run a one-shot at the Owlbear Wizard Staff Convention, but I've got some thoughts about the changes that have been made. So, with that, engage. Yeah, so we're going to talk about our experience of playing Modiphius' 2D20 Star Trek Adventures system. We've got a few questions to answer first. Who are you? Any relevant social medias that you want to share? I mean, whatever, okay? But then, level of fandoms, how much you know about Star Trek? Any previous experience with Star Trek RPGs? And if you're going to be a character from one of the TV show's films, which would it be?
My name's Andrew. You can find me as Zos93 on pretty much every social media site should you wish to. I'm not a huge Star Trek geek. I watched pretty much most of the original series and the films, quite a bit of new era, but I haven't really seen that much of the sort of spin-off shows. So I'd say I'm not a huge Star Trek geek, to be fair.
Yeah, sort of a vintage Star Trek.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's like Star Wars. I mean, it's just part of the air we breathe, isn't it? Basically, but yeah,
exactly.
And have you played any previous Star Trek RPGs at all?
I have. I had the original FATA one, although to be fair, we more played, that came with a cut-down version of Starfleet Battles, which you could play the Enterprise versus Birds of Prey or Romulan ships on like a hex match, and we played a lot of that back in the day, but not so much of the RPG, which is actually quite complicated and convoluted. I've played a fair bit of the Modiphius one, actually. I played a couple of campaigns of that before. but always as
Star Trek Adventures.
Star Trek Adventures. Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Sort of one we played. Yeah. So
It'd be good to get that sort of context with it. All right, okay.
Cool.
So thanks, Andrew. Right, I'm going to go over to Mike in that case. Okay, so Mike, level of fandom. Where would you put yourself?
Pretty high up, I would say.
Pretty high. I suspect so. Anyone who's got a Haynes manual for like the Bird of Prey, right? That tells me you know things. Okay, things you don't necessarily want to know, but you know them. So I'll take you've seen all the TV shows.
Yeah,
Got your Paramount subscription, all that nonsense.
Yeah, well, yeah, not so keen on the newer stuff. Card season 3 I quite enjoyed. But yeah, all
Strange New Worlds. You don't like
it's okay. I think they've just tried to shoehorn all the original characters into it. It's just a bit over the top, I think.
Controversial. Okay, because I love Strange New Worlds. Okay, all right. And what about previous experience with Star Trek RPGs, Modifius or otherwise?
Yeah, none really. I haven't played. This is the first. I mean, I've run Star Trek Adventures a couple of times.
Yeah,
but this is the first time playing it. So
okay, cool. All right. Oh, well, I'd say we'll do the characters at the end about who we would be. So we'll come back to you, Mike. Everyone got time to think about that one. So we're going to go with you, Jim. Okay, fandom. Are you the Andrew level, or are you sort of more Mike side of things?
So, Jim Hawkins, I've been watching Star Wars since I first saw it on BBC Two.
Star Wars.
So Star Trek. Both. Both. When
Go
people
buy yourself a
ask,
Star
I get
Wars.
people who ask me which one is which one's my favourite, and neither. They're both equally as right. So yeah, I've watched them all, every series. Every one of them has got something to add. I feel the same way about the Star Wars movies. I know people hate them, but everything has got something to add. As for the RPGs, well, I've got those.
That's being shown on the screen.
Yeah.
I also have this bad boy.
All right. Is that the Last Unicorn Games or the Decipher one? I think it's Lug, isn't it? Say on the side.
I think it's it's the Last Unicorn one.
Yeah, Lug Trek.
And two of the source books for it, because I'm that guy. And this dodgy one.
Okay, Prime Directive.
And this dodgy one that is weird and not real Star Trek.
They've got Kazinti in it. Come on.
And obviously I've got Star Trek Adventures and a few of those. And I've got out on my landing, I have the technical manuals for the Enterprise and Deep Space Nine and all that. So I'm that guy.
So you and Mike are probably on par. There might be a bit of a fight in the car park as to who knows more about the Gorn, perhaps. But you know,
I mean, I'd have to read up. I can't. It's not the sort of thing I remember off the top of my head. But I have the reference material.
That's the important thing.
And
have you played and run? Obviously, you played because you played with me. But have you run or played previously?
Yes, I've run all of those.
Okay.
I haven't played any of those previous ones as much as I'd love to, because the character creation, this lonely fun heaven, this character creation for this bad boy, it's amazing. Yeah, but so I've never played those. I've run them though, and I've played and run Star Trek Adventures.
Okay, cool. That's good. Excellent. Right. Last by no means least, Sam.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Sam Vale on all the socials. My level of fandom, I'm about on the par with Andy. I think I've seen mostly everything, but I've sort of lost touch with the recent stuff, the Below Decks or Picard's. I watched Picard season 1, so I'm not the hugest of fans, but I really do love bits and pieces of it. Yeah. Previous experience with the Star Trek RPG, I've played the FASA game, owned the FASA game. I've also recently done a game, Fate Accelerated, Star Trek game, which was quite interesting.
Did you run or play that?
I played in that one.
Okay.
And this is the first time I've actually played the 2D20 variant of the of Star Trek. And yeah.
Okay. But I think everyone's got some experience with other versions of 2D20 as well. I mean, I know, Jim, you played, is it Conan? Quite a bit of Conan, other things.
And John Carter as well. We did John Carter, didn't we?
John Carter, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so character from the films or the TV series, who would you be? So
it's so hard, man. Sulu, because he's the pilot and he's cool.
Sulu. He is cool. Hikaru Sulu, great.
He's cooler than all the others put together because he's the pilot.
He's the man. Okay, all right, Sulu. Okay, what about you, Mike?
I think it'd probably have to be Scotty.
Are we talking?
I guess to sit in the captain's chair from time to time.
Okay, are we talking Prime Scotty or are we talking the
Prime Scotty?
Prime Scotty. Okay, not the one in the Joss Whedon films then.
No.
Okay, Andrew.
Well, tempted as it is to say Worf, who's a huge influence on Quang, I think I'm going to have to go with Kirk simply because he gets to command the ship, be the action hero, and snog various groovy aliens. So I think you can't beat that, really.
Regardless of anything. Yeah, okay, whatever. That's fine. Yeah, Kirk, unreconstructed Kirk.
Exactly.
Okay, Sam.
I would go for the EMH, played by Robert Picardo.
Robert Picardo.
Oh, no. He was
a fantastic actor, and because he's a hologram, he could appear in absolutely everything and anywhere at any time.
Absolutely, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So me, Quark of Deep Space Nine, he is such a brilliant character, and I completely relate on so many levels. Huh? Garrett, right? There's so many great characters in Star Trek.
Best
I mean,
character in Star Trek ever.
Well, Morn, I'll fight you. Morn is the best character. I mean, he's the one that solves the Dominion War at the end of it. Anyway, right. Okay. So, all right. So we touched on our varying levels of familiarity with the background. I think it is something that's sort of gamers of our vintage. It's just part of the air we breathe, isn't it? Really, along with Star Trek, Captain Scott, and that sort of stuff. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to talk a little bit about the rules first of all. So 2D20 and sort of the iteration that we played in this set of series. I think we played it's over a dozen sessions. There's quite a lot we played, and it was episodic. So we didn't, there was no grand campaign theme to this. This was just sort of, a canter through post Federation Klingon War setting, and you guys were Klingons. So yeah, the IKS Dagor, the Swift Blade, and we can perhaps touch on our lack of ability with Klingon language later on. So we'll talk about the rules, a little bit about the rules. So this was version 1.5. So like the original Star Trek Adventures, and then that was version 1. There was the Klingon rule book, which is sort of like a 1.5, and then obviously, imminent is version 2, which will be interesting to see what that comes up with. So, right. So the basic resolution mechanic, 2d20, is what it says really. Basically roll 2d20. Essentially, you're trying to get low numbers on your dice. You've got essentially an attribute and trying to think now. Attribute and discipline. Discipline, yeah. I'm glad you're here, Sam. As the sub GM. Attribute and discipline. And then if you have a focus, essentially that means if you roll below your focus level, then you'll get the lowest stat you get. More momentum, more successes. I'll edit that so it makes sense, possibly. Anyway, all right. So what do we think about it? I mean, the mechanics are fairly straightforward. The thing I had issue with, or potentially thought might be issue, was about if you get greater than the number of successes you need, you generate momentum, or as a GM, you generate threat. I felt I was always a bit uncomfortable with it. It felt quite adversarial to me. And that came through in John Carter of Mars, where it felt like I was doing horrible things to the characters. I'm going, no, I'm just trying to make an interesting story. So anyway, over to you guys. What do you think? Basic mechanic, momentum, threat. What do you think?
There's definitely a way that you can game the system. If you know how much momentum and threats available to you, and you know how good you are at something, you're pretty sure you're going to be able to get some extra successes sometimes. So therefore, you can spend your extra momentum to do that in order to get your momentum back, especially when it's capped at 6. But it's definitely, you can definitely game it. I think it might be better in a sort of long-term game if the players didn't know how much momentum or threat was on the board. That might be a better way of using it. Then you could say, I will take a momentum there. You don't have any left. I will. Rather than be able to calculate how much you've got, calculate the odds of getting greater successes, which I was doing all the time.
Yeah, but that's your particular style of play, isn't it, Sam? But there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's just it's a thing you tend to do.
I did like the way it worked.
Yeah. Did you feel that the threat thing was it a little adversarial at that point?
Oh, yeah, but it's going to be a bit, isn't it? That's why it'd be a good idea if you hid how much threat you had.
Okay.
But every GM has that sort of option, don't they, to be adversarial? That's what you're doing. That's what you're creating adventure, creating situations. That's what it's all about.
I don't think it's adversarial necessarily, because I think, as Sam said, it is a game based on luck, and you can use sort of threat to balance out that luck. If the players are kind of just suddenly sweeping through everything, then due to some lucky dice rolls, you can throw some threat in to try and up the kind of level a bit and make it a bit more fun, rather than having the players to sweep through everything. And alternately, if things are going bad for the players, you can put momentum in to try and sort of turn it around. So I think I know what Sam said, it is very easy to game it when you've got kind of visible threat and momentum. So I think there is an argument for, as you say, keeping it kind of hidden, maybe tracked by the GM only. But although obviously the GM would then know how much threat he's got, so he would be able to play it in when the players.
So it's a fine balance, isn't it? Really, because the whole idea is everyone's having fun.
Exactly,
really
that's the thing, and I think you can use it to balance that fun, as I said, because if everything's going against the players, they can use momentum to try and turn it around, as opposed to just having constant high rolls. So
what about the rest of you guys? Do you play games where the momentum and threat's hidden, or is it all out in the open?
I mean,
When I ran Star Trek, I did think it was a bit adversarial, but also because the group I was playing with tended to struggle with completing tasks, so I pretty much ignored it.
Okay.
But I would certainly use it, and I think I'd take Sam's advice and just hide it.
Okay. I mean, there is a benefit, I think, with it being threat being visible, for example. I think probably momentum hidden is quite a good idea, but threat visible, it gives a sense of, it's all starting to build up now. And so in a lot of cases, momentum you can choose to add to threat. So if they're immediate, what they call immediate spends, and you might say, I want to use my momentum. Well, there's none left, but you want to add to my massive pile of threat, which is building up. Doesn't mean you got to use it all. I mean, I would, obviously, but it doesn't mean you have to use it all.
I mean, there is a trend towards that in more modern games, that sort of mechanic, which allows players to fiddle or kind of try and weight the odds. And it's only it's only fair that the GM gets something in turn. I mean, Star Wars / Genesis has kind of got a similar thing with Destiny points.
Okay.
Where obviously in Star Wars, the idea is it's the Force. You've got light side and dark side points, and everyone rolls a Force die, and that gives you the number of light and dark. Players can use the light points, but they have to flip one. So they flip one, and they can upgrade a die roll, or they can. There's certain things that some of the maybe special abilities that they can do, but once they flip it, it becomes a dark side point, which the GM can use then.
So it's like a method currency. Yeah.
So it's a similar thing, and it's a back and forth. I mean, it works best if you're constantly using it. It's slightly different, I guess, in Star Trek Adventures because it can be randomly generated because you generate it from extra successes. So I mean, it works. I feel like it works a little bit better in Conan because it's kind of representing you sort of steamrollering through combats, kind of like Conan does. The way it's applied in Star Trek Adventures, I guess, is to give the feel of the TV series, isn't it? Where you've got the characters are all in general competent,
extremely capable. They're like the best of the best, aren't they? In Starfleet,
they're always coming up with a last minute desperate solution to an impossible problem created by someone else. That's part. So like diffusing a torpedo that had been dumped in the middle of a sentient asteroid.
Sounds very Star Trek to me.
It's quite familiar. Yeah. So but yeah, I mean, I don't think it's adversarial because I've played a lot of games with that mechanic. But I guess some people who don't like that do view it as that. Like Neil, who is very kind of, it's a hit or a miss.
Yeah.
Nothing in between. It's you roll to hit, you roll to miss. But gaming it, you can game any system pretty much. Yeah. Even D20, you can figure out your chance of hitting because you've got 5% chance on each die face. So it's your it's how you how
I think
you
it was more
game,
from my perspective as the GM, really, because I say it it was like feel a little bit guilty for like throwing loads of threat into something. But then again, as you say, I was losing threat through rolling complications just as much as anybody else. So, but I think I suppose something completely new to the game. Let's say you came from the baseline, so D&D 5th edition into this. I think it's just been aware that actually it is. It's not the GM's picking on you. It's essentially trying to make it more of an enjoyable, interesting game. So, as you say, if the PC's a steamroller and everything, you can make it a little bit more friction, a bit more resistance, just to keep it, keep that fun level up.
And I guess it does give you that dial to be able to turn it up a notch if the players are finding it too easy. Because in a system like Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, I mean, you're probably going to find one or two players will be like that. Hold on a minute, that creature's tougher than it should be. Are you cheating? You'd be like that. Well, no, it's
that Mugato has been.
I'm making it harder for you because you're defeating everything in seconds.
Yeah, make it fun.
I think the comment Jim made about it working in Conan, I also think it worked in John Carter, and they're both pulp. And if you think about certainly original era Star Trek, that's quite pulpy as well, So I think less so in the modern series. I think there's certainly pulp elements in the original series, and I think that does kind of work in the same way it does with John Carter and with Conan.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I think it's just one of those things that you think, not sure. I quite like the idea though, Sam. I think that's a great idea in terms of keeping momentum hidden. Certainly try next time I come around to running it, I probably will do that. So I'm going to be running a sort of one shot at Owlbear using the 2nd edition system if it's out, which I'm sure it'll be out by then. The other thing I wanted to talk about was again tied to the whole point about threat and momentum were traits. So you can essentially spend threat or momentum to create an advantage or a disadvantage, basically make things harder or more difficult. I mean, I think obviously it's drawn conceptually from things like Fate aspects in Fate. Obviously, works differently here. But what do you guys? I mean, I think we struggled to sort of get up to speed with actually using traits and generating them in the first instance. I think towards the end of our run, we sort of got a bit more comfortable with it. What did you think? What were your thoughts about that?
Biggest problem we had was that
Go on, Sam.
Yeah, we're generally going straight into a combat situation where you didn't really have time to build up a sort of series of advantages or anything like that, because you'd had to get to cover or attack something, because otherwise you're going to get hit and damaged. So yeah, it'd be nice to be able to build up some advantages and things like that.
You can create them, and again, that's one of the things I think as a GM, especially with taking people through it who are relatively new to playing the system. You can create traits as players in combat as well. So you can say, "Oh, I'm going to set off some sort of. I'm going to shoot this stalactite, which will cause smoke to appear across the enemy, so it makes it harder for them to see." And I think you did that when we were playing on a planet where a sandstorm kicked up, for example. So you can come up with weird stuff, but again, it's getting used to how you leverage that when you're in the middle of basically shooting phases, aren't you?
I just thought it seemed a bit arbitrary. It was like, let's do this and get a +2, and then you say I'll do that and give you a -2. It all just seemed a bit kind of arbitrary. There wasn't any kind of real.
They're narrative devices.
Yeah,
really.
exactly. Yeah, it just seemed.
No, I get you absolutely,
Yeah.
Mike. Jim?
And the narrative dice system does this, which I've had many a conversation with some of the OSR gognards about the funny shaped dice. I mean, it's just it's as narrative as it needs to be, but it doesn't have to be. It can literally be, well, I've done this, and this is going to give us this advantage. I mean, in NDS, it's like, oh, you've got a boost die on it on your next roll, go. It's just I think it's part. I don't think they explain it very well in the core rule book. They could do a better job probably. And like Sam said, we were kind of we were sort of being like, Klingon warriors, so we're just kind of diving in head first without really giving much of a toss about what else was going on.
Battle left first. God.
It was easy to do in ship combat when not every character had something vital to do.
Yeah.
Then you could then create some sort of tachyon beam to enhance the whatever's.
Reverse the flux polarity and
you could
+2 texture travel.
yeah.
But no, I think you're right. It's interesting to hear that something was simple in ship combat, because we'll come to that. Because combat, anyway, I think traits. So they don't explain it particularly well in first edition and in Klingon rulebook. I know that in TUI, I think they are trying to be a lot more straightforward and again doubling down on traits as like these pluses, these advantages, disadvantages, or make things possible if they're impossible, and vice versa. But I think again, I think something coming from a different game where these things aren't there, they're just getting your head around it. And we will come to values in a second when we talk about experience, because again, that made my head melt for a long time, the whole thing about experience. What about you, Mike, in terms of traits? Did you use them when you ran before?
To be honest, no, I didn't. I think there might have been a couple of occasions where they sort of created an advantage, that sort of thing, but not really. But it's just something you just got to sort of get your head around and factor it into what you're going to do. If you're a landing party, as soon as you land, that sort of thing, or when you start combat, just to.
I think remembering it's there as a mechanic, because although the actual core mechanic is very straightforward, there's lots of stuff happening at the same time. So you've got traits, and we'll come on to values later on. We talk about experience. You've got obviously threats. So there's lots of moving parts of the game. And I think it certainly is a game that would reward system mastery. Actually, the more you play it, the better it gets. Really,
it's like all these games that you run.
I think
all these first points, all of them require learning as we go through. So experiencing the game, and you get a lot better towards the end of the game, by which time you finish the game. So, at the beginning.
Renaming them would be a good idea. Traits is stupid. That's a stupid name for them. Don't call them traits. That sounds like it's something your character does, because nearly every other role-playing game treats the word trait in that way. Rename them Modiphius. It's not whoever. It's not hard. Rename them and make it more easier to understand. You're welcome.
Advantage, sorry, Andrew.
I think for me, what made me feel a bit arbitrary was the fact that you could buy them on or off using momentum or threat. So it's almost like we'd spend 2 momentum to create some smoke, you'd then spend 2 threat to clear the smoke. It just seemed to, it was narrative, but it also kind of required the momentum spend. And what Sam said about, if you once you knew how to gain momentum, it was quite easy to, to use it to affect it in that kind of way. And it just, it just feels a bit kind of arbitrary,
that's fair. And I think it'd be interesting to see how they talk about it in 2E. I mean, I'm prepared to accept with all these things I was doing it wrong because I think with certainly with traits, it needs to be a role. There needs to be something narrative that's happened in the scene to make it happen. So that was what you guys were doing, and maybe I was buying it off without actually any of the non-player characters or the storyteller characters, whatever they call it, not making a role. But yeah, so I think it's interesting. Again, it's a bit of a wrinkle. It's got a lot of potential to it. Final thing I wanted to talk about was just the sort of the basic mechanics was this thing called extended tasks, which essentially is almost like an extended task is like a little character with their own stress track and various other things about it. Number one, it's quite hard to understand. I think a lot of people online struggling to just understand what an extended task is. And number two, you guys were just too good at it. So actually it was an extended task, which is supposed to be a dramatic, you've got to defuse the torpedo before the thing blows up. And it was like, oh, right, we've done it in a round or 2 rounds or something.
Well, once we got the hang of it and we knew how to use momentum, again, you could game the system and just bang as many momentum points in as you could.
I mean, as I recall, the extended task that we rolled really, really well to do them. As I recall, it wasn't like they were just easy. I'm fairly sure we always just caned the roll, and it was we were awesome. Like times 2.
Well, Steve started to make it harder and harder and harder the more we went through.
We were awesome, but there was also kind of elements of using the traits to game the system. So Steve would say, "Oh, this is going to be difficulty 5," and we say, "Oh, we'll spend 2 momentum to make it difficulty 4." And I think so. There was an element of gaming it, which I think probably didn't help. Combined with awesome rolls, obviously. But.
Of course, awesome rolls, absolutely. I think the whole point of them is to it's like it's a modification of a skill challenge. Essentially, that's what it is, really, isn't it? But the idea is that it's meant to build up tension. So when you'd only have a skill, one of these extended tasks when you've got like a ticking clock. So in such amount of rounds, this is going to happen. But yeah, and I think because the way your characters were set up, and because again, skillful players, nothing wrong with that. But again, in trying to keep the tension going, what I ended up doing was increase the resistance of the task. So basically, almost like resistance is how many successes you have to overcome to even start to reduce the stress or the hit point track of the extended task. But again, it felt like I was overcompensating for you guys being great. But
the resistance got up to like 5 at some points, didn't it? Yeah, and that with only 2 dice to roll, generally, you could only expect to get 4, maybe if you got focus. So getting a 5 just to get a success level was always going to be pretty tricky. So that's why we had to.
I will admit I was working that out on the fly. So what's the sweet spot in terms of the numbers?
It might be easier just to have that a standard resistance level, and then only as long as you go over that level, you get 1 success only, not the number of successes that you actually make over it.
Well, because in this one, you don't forget you rolled so in 1E 1.5, you had challenge dice, so the 6-sided dice, and you rolled for like how much damage or whatever you did. That's going in version 2. Boo, I say.
I love the challenge dice.
Yeah, you would. That level, I was slicing people out left, right, centre.
Yeah. So Battle will do flat damage in version 2. It'll still be pretty meaty, but it won't be like doing 10 or 12 damage in one bit like it was before.
17, I think, was my record.
17. I was like, okay, that's dead. Tell us how you slice and dice this Romulan, Gorn, Starfleet officer, take your pick, pretty much. Any thoughts on extended tasks there, Mike?
No, I mean, obviously they got more difficult as the game went on, but I quite enjoyed that.
I think
it was challenging with some of them, and then you trying to work out what you were going to do and all that. Which skills and attributes you're going to use.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a highly narrative game. It's a story game at the end of the day. And I know Neil will absolutely love the fact it's a story game. I will get him to play it at some point. But weirdly, there's a lot of rules in it as well. So it's it's got that it's got that sort of unusual bit of both, which I think I like it. I think it'd be interesting to see what version 2 looks like. Okay, all right. So skill tests, we talked about that stuff. Let's talk a little bit about personal combat. I mean, just the on the ground stuff. I mean, did it work well? Not so well? What were you guys thought?
I think the melee works quite well, but the ranged combat I thought was a bit swingy. It doesn't really, in Star Trek, well, in the, films, TV series, whatever. So the stun or kill.
Yeah.
And you still had, you could still take damage and that sort of thing. But if you were hit by a disruptor, you could survive it. Otherwise you'd be rolling characters all the time. But I don't think it worked quite as well as the melee combat. And I think the second edition is going to be, well, like you said, they're taking the challenge dice away. So
yeah. So in second edition, if you get hit, basically you're injured.
Yeah.
That's it, basically. And then you have to roll. Every character has their own personal stress, so essentially hit points, which they can choose to spend to offset that. But it's a lot more. So if you hit someone with a bat'leth, that's it. So there is no flat damage. It's just you're injured. That's it. You're going down unless you choose to spend your stress to overcome it.
Don't ever play the Doctor Who role-playing game.
Which one? The old one or the new one?
No, the new one, because like some of the weapon damage is just says it's lethal.
Yeah.
You get hit by it, you die.
Yeah.
You get hit by a Dalek, you die. So the idea is obviously not to fight,
But
somebody's going to try.
That's why you have story points, though, isn't it? That's the whole thing. It's like this Dalek shoots at you, you spend a story point, and you manage to duck behind a console or something. It's
so again, it's a bit of a currency you can use to sort of to make your characters more survivable. Any thoughts, Sam?
When we started creating our characters, I thought Klingon is going to be full of warriors and honor and a lot of combat in it. So I decided to create a character that had absolutely none of those traits at all, just to be a bit perverse, like I do, just to test the system. That's what we're doing. So I found my character was getting hit practically every single time anybody was shooting and just having to take the damage. There was any way around avoiding it or getting out of it, or even getting cover didn't give you a great amount of resistance, did it?
Yeah. So if
yeah,
you're saying 1.5, you start off with like a little bit of resistance, a bit of armor, and in first edition. But in second edition, basically the way it's going to work is that you, if you're in cover and you get shot at, essentially it becomes an opposed task. That's it. So if you're in the open and someone shoots at you, it's just based on do they hit you? That's it. Okay. If you're in cover, you get the chance to shoot back, and essentially you can. Again, there's a bit of game in the system in there, but it means that you've let shoot someone in cover. Chances are you might get shot first, and that's it. So
the way the initiative system worked, in that it's you them.
Yeah.
It's inevitably someone's going to get screwed at the end of it. And we were lucky that Andy's character had a thing where you could actually take the initiative.
Yeah.
And then so you could have two actions before anybody else moved. And then we also had you could buy initiative, can't you? You could with momentum.
Yeah.
Which we didn't tend to do much of, or a bit in ship combat. But yeah, it's just too expensive to spend momentum on
the
that.
initiative. So as you say, keep hold of it, and also once you've got it, you can spend momentum to act twice.
Yeah.
A little bit harder to act the second time, but yeah. As with all these things, there's a rule and then there's a way to bend it within this game. So, okay. So shooting was deadly if you got hit, but actually got a lot of options to work around it. King, so Andrew's character's bat'leth was incredibly sharp and just minced everything. He would just here's a big space. Because essentially it's his own movement. Krang's character was charged from one side of the battlefield to the other, basically get into close combat and just kill everything. That's pretty much how it worked. It was a guided missile. But that's fine. As long as everyone enjoyed it, that's the main thing. What about any thoughts, Jim, about the personal combat?
I mean, the only slight thing is you have to be on the ball, because it's opposed. If you're not keeping track of who's acted very, very closely, like you had to add a little marker, didn't you, to show who'd gone. It's easy to get confused, especially if someone attacks you and you win. In melee combat, you do damage to them.
Yeah.
And then have I gone? Was that? So sometimes, occasionally, we'd be like that. Wait a minute, you haven't gone yet.
A little bit of loss.
He attacked you. You've got to attack back. There was a lot of that. So you've got to make sure that you're on top of that. Otherwise, you can miss it. You might lose a go. I mean, arguably, if it's opposed tasks, is it? Yeah, and you're in melee combat, is it that super important? I don't know. yeah. So that was the one thing that stood out for me with the whole personal combat thing, is you have to make sure that you're on your actions, who's acted and who hasn't. Otherwise, it could be, especially if it's a great big melee, it could be a bit confusing. Like when we were fighting the mutiny, there was people all over, doing different things. I mean, I think I ended up throwing 2 people down the stairs at one point twice. But that was an opposed roll against something else. So we were just having to make sure we were keeping track of who had acted when. So
I mean, I think I think that was the thing with Quen that made him seem more effective than he was the fact that when someone attacked him, it was an opposed roll, and he was so good with a back left that he would generally take people out, even when they attacked him, which then left him free to attack someone else.
2 free attacks in a round.
Exactly, yeah. So
I suppose that's where Romulans sitting back with disruptors shooting you was the way.
Exactly, much harder. Exactly. Yeah.
All right, but
and only for as long as it took to get across.
Well, exactly.
Let's be fair.
Once you got into their zone, that was it. They were all dead.
Where's the honour in that, for goodness sake?
Well, yes, where's the honour in shoots them from a distance? Romulans, no honour. But Snap Judgment then. So effect dice in no longer going to be a thing in 2nd edition. Snap Judgment, good or bad? Jim?
Bad. I liked it.
Bad.
You liked it, Jim?
It gave randomness, which was quite interesting.
Yeah, I don't care. It'll work or it won't. We'll see.
No, I love the effect dice, but I can see why they get rid of them, because it is very swingy, to be fair.
Yeah, it's quite swingy.
Yeah. So because originally you said, I want to keep the effect dice, but now you're coming down the other side of it, which is fine. We're all allowed to change our minds. So.
I think but by and large, they works for us. So I think, we're going to say, we love them during that game. I mean, had the next game, they might work against us and we'll be saying, get rid of the effect dice.
Your opinion's only as good as the last roll.
Wow,
isn't it?
Precisely.
Fair enough. Okay. All right. So ship combat. Okay. Similar mechanics. The idea is that Jim goes head down the table. The idea is that everyone gets to go. It's like supposed to simulate it's a simulator, isn't it? Essentially, because it's like the tactical combat simulator. So you've got power to systems, and you've got hits and breaches and all that sort of stuff going on. Everyone's supposed to get a go. Wow. I mean, we tried combat. I think we only ever had one opposing ship that you were playing against. I mean, if I was trying to run 2 or 3 smaller ships against you guys, I mean, it took a whole evening to play a combat, didn't it? Really. So I don't know what your thoughts were about it.
I mean, I said it at the time. It simulated the TV show very well. It does tend on every TV show with the starship combat, it is literally ships just wailing on each other until one is damaged, and that's it. So and for all that you see on the bridge, Picard will be saying, 270 Mark 3, no, correction 3, and then you get, Byron Captain, that's all going on at the same time, because it's acting and it's choreographed. Whereas, the reality is, but when it cuts the outside, the ship turns slightly and then shoots, and that's it. So in a way, it's kind of like doing that. That's fine, but for me, it's just a bit too slow and stodgy. And it's probably because I've played some other games where Starship Combat is a little bit more fluid. Certainly, I keep banging on about it, but certainly the Star Wars system, the narrative dice system, I know people hate it, but Star Wars, the Starship Wars combat, okay. They improved it for Genesis, but you can pass dice to each other, you can improve each other's stuff, and there was some of that in the Starship Combat here, but it was a bit stodgy. It wasn't very exciting. It was a bit kind of, oh god, we've got Starship Combat. Can't we just beam aboard and have a fight? That'd be so much easier.
Yeah.
I mean, it was great. Well, I mean, the last one, we went into we went into the Nebula, didn't we? And we were, Rathakarning it with that Romulan shit. But so it's like that. Okay, yes, Rathakarn. That's what we know.
There we go. Yeah.
But in general, it's a bit.
It is. Yeah, it's fair. Andrew,
I was going to say it is very complicated. I mean, it was hard enough with kind of 4 players. Each of us keeping an eye on 1 or 2 things. I mean, God knows how you manage that as a GM. As it's saying that. With one ship, you're trying to keep an eye on power, shields, damage.
Yeah, it is very complicated, and I think if I was trying to have, as I say, 2 or 3, sorry, Andrew, 2 or 3 ships, I wouldn't do it, basically.
Yeah, I think as a GM, you've basically got to literally kind of just make it up. Because I don't think you can even, you did a brilliant job of kind of keeping an eye on it. But I mean, you certainly couldn't. You certainly couldn't control two or three ships. I mean,
Yeah, it's challenging, isn't it?
I must admit, it's a bit kind of mech warrior-y, but I think that during ship combat, you should just switch to playing like Starfleet battles or something, and actually kind of play
That's effectively what
the
it was a
damn
bit
thing
like,
out.
wasn't it?
Which is
It's a hex space thing. Sam, what do you reckon?
I think as players, you definitely need to have your shit about you with what you're doing. You need to be focused on what you're about to do. You need to know who's going to go next, who's gone before you, what the options are. You need to have your head screwed on. So this is not a game for every player, I have to say. Also, certain skills or focuses or disciplines, for example, were a lot more useful than others. So an engineer with a high-skilled engineer would have been a lot more useful in our games that we played because there's a lot of engineering stuff to do, like shifting power around, getting shields back, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, overall, I did really enjoy the game because we all got something. We all had to do something. Yeah, we all had actions we could do. And it was all we were pulling for each other. And
I mean, I did spend quite a bit of time pulling together like cheat sheets and sort of ready reference things, just so you, and then almost saying, well, if you're going to do like movement, these are the various people who could do these things, just to try and consolidate what is a huge amount of information for players into one place. But even then, it was pretty challenging.
Would have been helpful. So it would have been helpful before we started playing to actually know what sort of careers we were going to go for, because that would have.
Think I planned this stuff out, Sam? Come on.
No. We could have gamed it so that we knew who's going to be the commander, who's going to be the engineer, the security, and whatever the con. Yeah. That's what we needed, and we hadn't done that, so it was a bit mishmashy.
As you said, with all the games that I run, it's usually by the end of it you go, now I know how to run this. Now we know how to play this.
We should have done this slightly differently. Should have started somewhere else.
Oh well, it's all fun. It's what it's all about. You have to play. The only way you really get to grips with these things is by playing it, and for me, it's running it. So yeah. What do you think, Mike? Any thoughts? Do you do any Starship combat when you're running it?
Yeah, I did a. For when I did it as a con game, so I sort of redid the ship sheet and all that sort of thing, and I kind of just so the players could move the power and shields around and all that sort of thing. So but yeah, it's quite crunchy, but I gotta say I did enjoy it. But,
yeah, it's good. It is good fun. Like you say, it's a bit like Mech Warrior. I mean, you just come for the crunch, stay for the explosions, basically.
How did you find it, though, Steve?
I found it.
GMing it.
There's a lot going on because obviously I was trying to adjudicate what you guys were doing. I mean, you were on it anyway. So as you say, certainly I think we had about 3 ship combats we were playing. By the third one, you knew what you were doing pretty much, or you're there or thereabouts. I think as GM, I mean, there are options for like NPC damage, but the first time we played a ship combat, I used NPC ship damage, but they were so soft that it was of no threat. You just went straight through it in like one shot, and I was like, oh, well, that's okay. So I'd be interested to see what they do in second edition. I mean, I think it's a general recognition that it's great, but it's a lot, and I think actually you want something probably a bit more narrative focused. So yeah, I'll be interested to see what they do with that one. But yeah, I liked it. I mean, I like BattleTech, so happy days. It's like a board game basically. So yeah, cool. Okay. So we talked about the basic momentum. We talked about the basic mechanic. Personal combat, we think it's okay. Ship combat, okay, but a bit too much. And then we come to essentially the last section. I think really it's about sort of experience and character development. This took me. Did anyone ever understand what we were doing? Quick straw poll.
Yeah. Yeah, sort of getting there in the end.
Yeah.
The milestones and things are a bit weird because what Jim said earlier, when you're taking your traits, you don't kind of know which ones are actually useful. And so, to kind of get the experience, you had to kind of try and shoehorn character traits in.
Values.
Character values, and that you sort of pick them at the beginning. And I had a combat character, but I had kind of very few kind of combat related traits. So I was like, what have I done? Traits
are things like advantages, disadvantages. We talk about values.
Sorry, values.
No, it's all right because anyone listens, they're going to be confused anyway.
See, rename them.
Well, okay. So values. You're right. Okay, I think as with all these things, you set your character up, you only learn what you need played for a while, and actually the system itself, experience system, it's a bit like Traveller in as much as you play to your values or you play against your values, and if that happens in game, you gain this thing called determination, which basically is a bit like sort of boosts, really. I think as far as values go, I get the sense that when you set your character up, you'll know how you are as a player. You know the sort of things you like to do as a player. Okay, so it always feels like you need to, if you're having 3 values at the start, you pick one which goes with how you like to play things. Okay, which means you can use determination, and then pick 2, which are the things you don't do as a player, because then it's easy to play against them, because you think naturally go, actually, so for Queng, your thing was obviously just running into combat and just mincing stuff. So maybe your value might be think twice before attacking or something, which goes you have to pick these things which provide you a bit of friction, because that's then what generates the experience.
It doesn't help that both the original core book and the King on core book don't give a lot of guidance for traits. They just say, there could be anything. Values. Well, traits as well. But there's not a lot of guidance. It's just it could be anything. You could do this, you could do this. I mean, at least the character builder has got a random generator now where you can click it and it will give you an example one, which all mine came from. Because you say a role play, you've got to come up with something that your character is going to, a value your character believes in, or about your holds it, and it could take, unless you're sort of I guess very kind of theatrical, so that it could take you 3 days to come up with that. It's not very well defined, and I don't think it's a very good mechanic, but I appreciate what they're trying to do. They're trying to. It's the big thing about Star Trek, isn't it? McClellan even says it, doesn't he? We work to better ourselves. We did the earning sort of material goods is beneath us, sort of thing. I get it. It's just not very well. I just don't think it's very well explained. There's not a lot. The guidance in the book isn't very good. Just saying you could pick anything. That's not good. That's not good advice.
Nobody played against their value at all, did they? That's another way of
I think Mike did once as well. I don't think I played, because obviously I went for the kind of values of a warrior, and that's how I played it. So I didn't.
Which is great, because if you have a value which you would naturally play to, and I think it's more about, yes, obviously you're playing a character, but equally there's the way you like to play as a person, that's fun for you. So having something which allows you to play towards it means you can spend your determination, which gives you buffs, But then to get your determination back, and also to to improve your character, or to change your character, right? I don't think your character's improved that much, really. You have to have things to play against. So I think, it's a lesson learned for me if I ever play again or run it again.
It didn't help us that we didn't know how values were used at the beginning of the game when we selected them.
Nor did I.
Had we known that,
exactly, we'd have probably gone differently. Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely would.
Yeah, same.
Inexperienced GM. Me, Sam. I always start these games completely inexperienced. By the end, I know what I'm doing, then I stop and play something else, which I'm inexperienced at. So
I mean, to be fair, you did give us the book. We probably didn't read it particularly, because not necessarily. I mean, experience isn't necessarily one of the things you actually read when you're first starting out on a game. Because you assume there is some sort of experience system. You don't actually.
Yeah, and one of the light bulb moments for me is that actually, your main character, the one you set up at the start, they don't really ever get much better, really. They might get a little bit better. It's more like Traveller, so it's more like lateral improvement, so you can change your values, you can move things around. Okay, it's more about, so I think I read this, or someone said it to me, I didn't say it in the crew myself, that actually it's the ship and the crew that's the character. So the character you create right at the start is your super competent, almost like they're like your lead character, the one that is at the start of the credits, and then during the game there's a mechanic where you can create supporting characters. So for example, Sam's engineer scientist probably wouldn't be that useful in a fight, so therefore you can create a supporting character. It might be like a tactical like a warrior,
red shirt,
or a warrior or something, who then might survive from game to game. But then as your main character progresses or gains experience, you can actually build up the abilities of these supporting characters. So you end up with it becomes like troop. Is that the right word?
Troop play, yeah, like
and also you can improve your ship as well, like give him more advantages, disadvantages. You can give it traits, whatever. And that's very Star Trek. Actually, it's that ensemble approach. You're using your values, but as you say, Sam,
it's rubbish for a role-playing game. It's what it is.
It works in ours, but the problem is in ours it's clearly explained how it works, but in Star Trek it's not clearly explained how it works.
It took me a while to
So
get
it's,
around it. What do you reckon, Sam?
Yeah, it's a rubbish system. You need to have your character who you can improve your character to make them even more awesome. To have other characters dotted around who are absolutely rubbish to start with, I don't really want to be playing a different character than my main one. I mean, yes, I mean, it might work, but you'd want to make the experience that you spend on them worth double, for example, just to give it more value. Same for the ship. If you're going to improve the ship, you want to make it a cheaper cost on the experience level rather than developing your own character.
Yeah, I don't think anyone ever spent any points on supporting characters, or it's quite a few. You got arcs. So you've got log entries, milestones, and arcs. And then the arc is the sort of one that gives you the most potential bang for your buck, if you like. But I don't think anyone spent anything on the ship or supporting characters, which is fine.
I don't think anyone really got that much experience, to be fair, because they're playing against the values thing. I think I got like 1 or 2 well, the first one is the milestone.
Everyone got an arc out of it at some point.
Boost your house as well, can't you?
Yes, that's another thing in the Klingon book.
You did tell us we were going to get a different ship as well, but then that went by the wayside because we went to a wedding.
Yeah, and then we were going to play after that, but then we just went. The wedding went long. These things were Klingon weddings run over. What can I say? Yeah, you're going to be on board a Katinga class D7, but we never got to that point.
I quite like the honours system. I got Order of the Batleth, and I think Sam's character got something as well. That was quite fun, but.
Well, I liked it. So I liked it up until the point I realised that I'd given my glory away to you Muppets so that you would be better. And then my next glory roll was 1, terrible. So I couldn't get anything. I was like, what have I done? Why was I selfish? What a fool!
Klingons.
My own fault playing a commander. I almost never do that because it can make me regress to some uncomfortable habits. So I almost never do that, and I did do it, and I suffered for it with the glory thing.
There you go.
At least you didn't micromanage, Jim.
Well, you've got to be joking. And any role-playing game, it's like herding cats, isn't it? If you've got a pie, hey, do this, stuff that, and do something else.
Any thoughts, Mike, on that and the whole experience thing?
Yeah, like you said, I think it was slightly different for the Klingons, but if you're like Federation, you're at the top of your game, so you're not really expected to progress sort of experience-wise.
Yeah. You might go sort of sideways in terms of change slightly, but it is, and I think so. I think you're right, Sam. I think it's not rubbish. I think it's a great idea, and it absolutely plays into Star Trek in terms of it's about improving yourself, and so I absolutely see that. I think a lot of it is implicit, and it's only by thinking about it, playing it. And again, it's another thing where experience and system mastery really, really helps with this game, which is odd because a lot of story games tend to be quite light on that stuff. But yeah, it's an interesting middle ground, isn't it, really? Okay, cool. Just briefly, because I'm conscious of time, touch on, so we played over Foundry. Just the Foundry system was great. Yeah, it's a really good.
It's really good. Yeah.
It's for 1E. I think that they're currently working on, or someone is working on basically 2E. It's relatively straightforward to do anyway. So that's a free setup. So you don't have to purchase anything for that one. See, once you've got the Foundry license. We talked about an online character generator by somebody called BC Holmes, which is brilliant. So it only just creates a character for you. It also
once we got the right, didn't work first time for me. I had to use the right browser.
Yeah, well, that's because you're using Opera, weren't you? It's basically it's your own
Firefox.
Firefox. Yeah.
I mean, there was a Conan one as well, which was very, very similar.
Okay,
in a very similar vein. But that Modifius are happy to point you towards and support. But the Star Wars one the Star Trek one's very good.
Absolutely, yeah, really good. There's lots of work going on that one. And just finally, so in terms of online resources, there's a blog called Continuing Conversations, which is and there's a podcast as well, and they're great. I mean, basically, they're out every week. You've got the project manager for the thing. You've got the designer on there. You've got various other people, and they will do a deep dive into the materials. Talking of materials, there's tons of stuff out, like quadrant source books. There's some really good campaigns out there. There's quite a lot of scenarios. There's loads of scenarios up on the Modifius site, a lot of which are free. So I think actually it's a really, really well supported game line, and I think obviously it's going well because they're strange new worlds, and that's the aesthetic of the new system. I mean, I've pre-ordered second edition, so it's definitely going to be hitting my shelf at some point. I think you have as well, haven't you, Mike?
Yeah, there's also IDW comic publisher. They're publishing a lot of stories from various different series. So they've just done a series called Defiant, which has got Worf, Spock, Law, I think Scotty, and one other sort of character, sort of all sort of gallivanting around.
Sounds cool.
Yeah,
like it.
Mishmash,
that's what it's all about. But yeah, so I think there's tons out there. So I think sort of final thoughts from me and then from you guys. I mean, I really like it. Yeah, no game system is perfect. I mean, obviously it's Star Trek, so for me it's a massive win. I used to sit and watch Star Trek with my mum when I was tiny, so it's got a lot of associations for me. In terms of the game, yes, it's narrative, but there's a lot of crunch. I think 2E having the quick starts out, so I've got a lot of seeing what I've seen there. I've got a lot of hope. Second edition, all the stuff that's out is going to be compatible with a little bit of tinkering, but not much. So I'm definitely going to be coming back to it in the future and running it as well. What about you guys? Any thoughts? If you haven't got it, are you thinking about picking it up? Would you run it? Would you play it again? Do you think? Sam, go with you first.
No, I wouldn't play it or pick it up. I wouldn't actually run it. It's way too complicated for my feeble brain. It was good fun, but it does reward players who are actually on the ball, know what they're doing, and players who are can get experience with the game. I mean, those first few games were just so confusing, but once we got it and we managed to game us the game, we really got into it, and I think we could have a lot more fun, especially on an extended campaign. That it would reward extended campaigns, especially when you can increase your house, you increase the ship, increase the NPCs, and that sort of thing. So I did really enjoy it.
Good, great stuff. Andrew,
thanks for running.
No, my pleasure. Andrew,
again, like you, nostalgia. I remember watching the original series with my dad when I was a little kid and loved it. And I really enjoyed the game. It had the pulp elements that we had in Conan and John Carter, so that was quite fun. It did definitely reflect the Star Trek universe, the whole Klingon honor system, and as Sam said, I think that would be a brilliant game to play for a really long time with the houses and the Klingon politics and that, which I think would give more for the characters who aren't necessarily kind of straight up warriors to actually kind of do. So I think it would allow sort of more differences in character creation there, and maybe as we talked about troop play as well, which I think could be quite fun over a longer campaign. So I probably won't pick up second edition because I'm very unlikely ever to run it, but no, I really enjoyed it and I'd certainly give it another go.
Yeah, great stuff. I think it was it was enjoyable, and I think that nostalgia was a big draw for me to start with. Mike, what about yourself? Anyway, so any plans to run it?
Yeah, definitely. I really enjoyed it, and I've got some ideas for doing a classic series mini campaign, and I'd quite like to see what they do for the movie era stuff as well, just to see what
because they've got the license to all of it now, haven't they? Including the I can't remember what the name is for the sort of spin-off verse where Vulcan gets destroyed. They've got all of it basically. So Kelvin timeline they call it. All right. I love this nerdy stuff. What about you, Jim?
I like Star Trek. I've watched it all, and I enjoyed the game. I've got the books. I'll probably pick it second edition. I'm pre-ordered it, but that's because I generally forgot. I mean, I did try to get in on one of the second edition games they were having at Game Expo, but obviously the places on those were gone like that. So there was no chance of getting on them. I'm one of those that likes to kind of I'd like to play Orion Pirate or where all the characters are in Section 31.
You would, Jim.
And you're going on, we're going on, Black Ops stuff. Stuff it's all that stuff is always hinted at in Star Trek, but it's generally, hey, here's your base, your star base or your ship, and off you go, you Starfleet heroes, and get on with it. And
Section 31's coming out, isn't it? A TV series.
I kind of want to, I kind of like to, get into the Star Trek universe, but maybe just, not traditionally. But because I'm a weirdo.
I don't know. Or you were Klingons, weren't you? That involved far more violence you normally expect in a Star Trek series. So,
I've only ever played this Federation before, and there was nowhere near the level of violence that there was in the Klingon.
Oh well, on that highly positive note, you come to me for the violence. That's what it's all about. All right.
The violence was great. It was great. It was really good fun.
All right. Okay. So again, thanks again for playing. It was great fun. But thanks again. All right, take it easy, and I'll speak to you sometime soon.
No worries.
Thanks a lot then. Okay.
Bye.
So, having quaffed the blood wine of 1E and sipped the Romulan ale of 2E, what are my early thoughts regarding the new edition? First of all, for me, the core book itself is really well laid out for use in play. 1E was very Star Trek, with coloured text on a black background, which looked great, but was horrible to look at. 2E has a very clean, Strange New Worlds aesthetic, which lends itself to much greater readability. Brilliantly, it also has a series of flowcharts that summarise game mechanics and make it easy to understand what's going on. Frankly, all games should do this. The core mechanics haven't changed much at all, which is a good thing, as it means all those first edition supplements are fully usable with only a minimum of effort. However, there have been some changes to simplify and streamline things, like extended tasks, as well as personal and ship combat. I've also come around to the removal of challenge dice from the game. It just makes it quicker and less swingy, whilst the changes to personal combat mean that your Klingon warriors can be just as effective as before. The most significant change to personal combat for me is the removal of stress tracks for most GM characters. Although I struggled a bit with the impact of this during the con game I ran, on reflection, this makes the game more like Trek. Now, if a GM character is hit, they go down unless the GM spends threat to keep them going. As threat is useful for more fun things than keeping minor characters alive, this means that combat is only extended if it's the focus of an adventure, or if there's a purpose to it beyond simply fighting. As for me, fighting isn't the core expression of Star Trek. I like that this is baked into the rules. Finally, Starship combat has been cleaned up a lot. I mean, a lot. Although each player character can have a role during combat, the nuts and bolts of the thing has been simplified considerably. Admittedly, I haven't run a ship combat as yet, but I really don't see that it'll be the grind that it was in 1E. Overall, I'm really happy with the changes from 1E to 2E, and I think that's reflected in what I've seen online. There's nothing a certain section of ttrpg fans enjoy more than a good edition war, but that just hasn't happened with Star Trek Adventurers. In my opinion, if you're a fan of Star Trek and RPGs, there's never been a better time to beam aboard.
Warning. Warp core collapse in 10 seconds.
Thanks for listening to another exploration of my gaming vexes. If you've got any thoughts you'd like to add to what you've heard here, or a gaming vex of your own you'd like to offer up for discussion, you can get in touch with me on Blue Sky via @orlanth.bsky.social or via Discord as orlanth.vex. Until next time, may all of your games be free of vexatiousness and be excellent to each other always.